And we're talking just camp news.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is showtime here at the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast, a special Wednesday night edition. We weren't able to do it on our typical Tuesday night, but we are here for Wednesday. Fantasy Football Buzz podcast with myself, the commish. We've got Cyclop 2020. How are you guys doing tonight?
Feeling great, doing good. You know why it's so special tonight?
Why is it so special?
We are one night away from the first football game.
That's right.
Hall of Fame game, baby.
Where nobody will be playing except maybe Najee Harris.
Pretty much. Yeah, I heard it came out that he's going to play in all four preseason games.
All four. Yeah, they have four instead of three.
Exactly.
I don't believe it, but all right. You know, it's still early.
Behind that offensive line, that's a risk. I don't know if I would do that. Anyway, I feel like a girl that's been on her period because I'm excited. They got pads on and training camp. Very exciting. To me, it's when that's terrible. Sorry to our listeners. It's terrible. We are not politically correct, and I'm not even trying to be. But this, to me, is when football starts. All the stuff that you're seeing. This is it, and it's exciting. And defense is always going to be ahead of the offense, just with the physicality of pads on. But it's exciting, and man, injuries. And significant injuries already starting. Oh my God! So we got a lot to talk about, Commissioner.
Yeah. So what we're going to do tonight? We're going to go through some camp notes, some news, some injuries, find out what's going on, how that affects fantasy football. We're then going to do a mock, and we're going to ask the audience, starting now, actually, which position in the first round, it would be the first 3 rounds, but what position do you want us to mock? Is it the first choice? I think that's a little too obvious. Is it the second, the fifth? Let us know what position you want us to mock tonight, and we will go through that. And, of course, we will have the now patented Kenneth question of the night, and we actually have Kenneth on the phone. Kenneth, how are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Question of the night that I have is which running backfield do you see leading the NFL in rushing heading into this season?
I'm not quite hearing Kenneth as clear as.
He's saying which. I'll let you know. He's saying which NFL backfield is going to lead the league. Is it lead the league in rushing yards? Are you talking fantasy football, or are you talking just straight yards?
Straight yards.
Yep. So it's just straight
yards.
You can also apply it fantasy-wise as well.
Okay.
Okay. Are we answering that now?
Yeah. Let's talk about it, and of course, it'll be the question of the night. So if anybody calls in or wants to comment in our comment section on YouTube Live or Facebook, just go ahead and do that. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm obviously itching to answer it because to me it's so flagrant.
Let's hear it.
I think it's got to be Cleveland. First of all, Stefanski has that. That is a run-first offense. They have arguably 2 RB1s on that team. They're both very, very capable of toting the rock. Chubb is an absolute beast. If he was a 3-down ball carrier, I honestly believe he'd probably be the most productive running back in football. And you can't argue with how good Kareem Hunt is. So that's a run-first team with a good offensive line and a much improved defense. I mean, they're talking about Jadeveon Clowney looks like he did when he was in college, fully healthy to go with Myles Garrett. They're going to be running early and often. I love Chubb. I love Kareem Hunt. I love Chubb. It's not really a running quarterback there. I don't see how Cleveland doesn't lead with that 2-headed backfield in rushing this year.
What about you, Cyclops?
So that's hard to argue with. But I'm going to give you another one here, and it's going to be for a lot of different factors. And I'm going to go with New Orleans. You have Kamara. You have Latavius Murray. They are not going to have Michael Thomas for we don't know how long. Their quarterback situation, there's a lot of different factors to factor in to that. But I think they're going to be using that backfield, especially fantasy-wise. There's going to be a lot of check down passes. There's going to be a lot of running. So an overall backfield.
Rushing yards? Are we talking about NFL backfield?
We're talking about rushing yards for a backfield.
Rushing yards, probably not, but fantasy, we were kind of going with both. So fantasy-wise, I think that's strong. Rushing yards is going to be kind of hard to compete with Tennessee with Derrick Henry, right? They're just going to feed him the ball again this year, down after down. And I think the offense is going to be opened up a little bit, and that's going to be a backfield that's going to be hard to.
Well, let me give you a little history, a little information here. So I don't know if quarterback it would be considered part of your backfield, but I will tell you that the team that led the NFL in rushing last year was Baltimore with over 3,000 yards.
Right.
Then Tennessee with close to 2,700. Then the Browns with 2,300. And believe it or not, I'm going to hold on to my hat. The New England Patriots, 2,346 yards.
Cam Newton.
Even more, right? Yeah. Even more than the Minnesota Vikings. So that is very interesting. But that all being said, if you do not count the
quarterback in that,
then I would agree with Keith and say that it's got to be the Cleveland Browns. Kenneth, who do you think?
I'd have to agree as far as Cleveland, but like you said, if it wasn't for the QB, I would have probably actually said Baltimore.
Yeah.
So I'll say either Baltimore or Cleveland, one of those two.
All right. Well, if anybody would like to chime in on the Kenneth question of the night or of anything else that we're going to talk about tonight, give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, 2899, or go ahead and place your comment on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, and we will get to your question immediately live on the air. Thanks, Kenneth. We appreciate the call. And Brad, Keith, why don't you take us through what's going on in training camp?
Sure. I'll start off with some interesting quarterback news, not just injuries, but things that we're hearing that are fantasy relevant and interesting in camp. Obviously, we know about Carson Wentz. That's been out there for a little bit. He's going to miss good part of the season. Interesting, though. Yes, Jacob Eason's going to be the quarterback, but there's a Phillip Rivers sighting in the in the press, and he has not ruled out that he has completely hung up his cleats. So stay tuned on that, because as the quarterback goes there, we know it's going to have a big impact on what's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor, T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell, and, of course, Michael Pittman. Some interesting, Deshaun Watson, by the way, is missing a second consecutive practice, something to keep an eye on there. Not a lot of fantasy relevance in Houston other than possibly Deshaun, maybe, of course, David Johnson. Here's some interesting news. Joe Burrow, not looking too good in practice. They're not happy with what's going on in training camp. And the biggest deal is that in training camp, either way, you're not hearing my point. My point is the offensive line is getting so overwhelmed by the defensive line. They're not looking good. They got Jamar Chase. I'm going to go back and forth on this a lot. Big mistake. They should have gotten Penei Sewell, and they're starting to see it. He's not looking very good in camp. Andy Dalton looks like, as it stands right now, he's kind of pinned in as the starter, leading over Justin Fields at the moment in Chicago. And that's an interesting thing to look at. Drew Lock and Teddy B. Right now, it looks like Drew Lock has his foot on. He's got the foothold on the starting position there. He's looked a little bit better in camp. And they're talking about what's going on with Jimmy G and Trey Lance. And it looks like Jimmy G right now has a little bit of an edge over Trey Lance. So just little things to be in. That to me is a big deal. That makes guys like Brandon Ayuk and George Brittle, I love that, by the way, a little more interesting to look at with Jimmy G with his foot on the hold there.
Did you call him George Brittle?
George Brittle, that is correct.
For obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons, exactly. And as far as quarterback news, that really, and then other listen, I'm a homer, so you know I'm going to talk about it. They are raving about Tua. In Finn's camp. He's going downfield early and often. Albert Wilson, they said, is fully back. He's looking great. He's not hesitant. He's holding on the ball a little bit longer than I'd like, but they say he looks like a different quarterback. He's very confident. He's slinging the rock. His accuracy is off the charts. Jalen Waddle and him, they already had a nice connection. So I'm not saying you're going to pick up Tua and start him maybe in a 2 quarterback leagues, possibly dynasty keeper league, something to look at. But it's going to make it very interesting looking at guys like Jalen Waddle, Gesicki, Parker, if he ever gets off, he's off injury, see what he does there. But could make some interesting plays for some of the other fantasy relevant players in the Dolphins offense. So I'm going to concede.
What's interesting here, and I don't know how fantasy relevant this is, but Albert Wilson and Jalen Waddle play the same position, right? So most likely, unless there's special sets, we're not going to see them both on the field at the same time. And right now, even though they're both having a really good camp, Wilson is the man right now.
Looks amazing.
So it would be interesting to see what they're going to do about that dynamic, especially since Preston and Parker have both been AWOL. Not necessarily AWOL, but they haven't been relevant or practicing.
Parker's back he's back on the field, but yeah.
Which is giving Isaiah Ford an opportunity to make a team that he might not have made if both Parker. I'm sorry. Again.
And Jakeem Grant has been getting a lot of looks, and he's been outstanding in camp.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Look, if Jakeem Grant doesn't make a few of those big drops, it's a whole different conversation.
It's a whole different conversation.
Because he had a fantastic year.
I'll tell you what I see, Kamish, very interesting. You've got these 2 offensive coordinators in Studesville, and oh my God, I'm forgetting the other guy's name. I really think they're going to get very creative with Waddle in the slot and maybe Albert Wilson lined up in an offset eye. That is going to be very hard to defend. You got jet sweeps, all these possibilities, halfback wheels. With that kind of speed and those 2 out there, I see the Dolphins being able to get very, very creative.
So let's talk fantasy for a second.
That's what I was going to do. That's what I was going to do. I was going to say, if you had to draft today, are there any Dolphin wide receivers that you are drafting in the top 25 receivers out there?
Will Fuller, who we haven't brought up, to me is going to be the guy that will carry the fantasy relevancy. It's possible that Albert Wilson will. I would like to see what's going to happen during preseason. But to me, right now, it's going to be Will Fuller. But we haven't even seen him on the field. We haven't, we know he's going to miss the first game. But we also haven't seen him on the field yet to really see.
And this is a guy that very rarely goes a whole season playing 16 games.
He rarely goes a whole game.
Right. I got to tell you, Kamish, Will Fuller is a talent. He's a field stretcher. He can catch the ball, and he's a good route runner. But I think they drafted Jalen Waddle number 1. They're going to line him up all over the field. I think Waddle might emerge as the most fantasy relevant on the team. Parker and Williams are great possession guys. Neither of them could ever stay healthy. And granted, Waddle just came off an injury. It's a great question. I don't see anyone in the top 25. I think Gesicki's the most fantasy relevant pass catcher on the team, if to be quite honest. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Well, let me ask you. Go ahead, Brad.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to get out of the Dolphin talk and go back to what we were talking about in Indianapolis with the injury to Carson Wentz. And I wanted to understand how you felt, how that impacts somebody like Taylor. And also with the Quentin Nelson injury, right? They lose the anchor of their offensive line for, what do they say, 5 to 12 weeks, which is a whole other discussion. Is it 5 or is it 12?
Right.
And you would think in 2021 with modern medicine, you would know if it's 5 or 12, say 10 to 11, not 5 to 12.
Amazingly enough, Quentin and Wentz have the same exact injury.
Yep.
So and the doctor did one surgery yesterday and one surgery today, the same surgery. They both have the same injury, which is, they're already calling Indy the 2021 49ers.
Yeah. So how can that not have a massive impact on JT? I mean, just absolutely positively.
Well, let me ask you something. I mean, right now, his rank is about 15 overall. Mm-hmm.
Taylor?
End of first round, middle of second
ADP.
Round.
Yeah.
Which injury are you concerned about? Is it Wentz's injury? Is it Nelson's? Is it both? What are you concerned about?
I'm concerned. I'm almost not that concerned with the injury. The offensive line is going to be fine. I understand they lose the center of it. The quarterback play is what's going to be, a lot of people thought Wentz is kind of done anyway, right? He's going back to Frank Reich, and so he's going to be putting him in better position.
But you need me to give you a list of teams that are running backs that have done very well in fantasy football without quarterbacks. I mean, that they don't necessarily go hand in hand.
I understand.
In fact, you might end up relying more on Taylor.
You didn't let me finish. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I've heard people putting Taylor up into the top 6 picks at this point. They think he's just going to be a workhorse there. He's very talented. We saw that the second half of last year. He ran over everybody, and they're going to have to rely on him there in Indy.
I'm concerned. I think he's going to go up against an enormous amount of 8-man fronts. I think it's bigger to lose Wentz than Quentin, because that is a good offensive line. Granted, you lost the centerpiece of it, but I think he's going to be running against the box all season now. And again, good running backs will be able to evade that, but you're going to see a lot of 3 and outs because you're going to get. I think it's a problem. I think it hurts his value. I don't know by how much.
To me, they're going to be playing from behind, right?
Right.
They still have a good defense, but they're not going to be able to score as easily.
Right.
That's right. And they've only ruled Wentz out for week 1 at this point.
Yeah.
So I understand it's going to be most likely be longer than that, and then of course he has to get in and get now have a better coercion with the offense and Hilton and the other receivers, but. I think Taylor's stock is rising, not falling at this point.
I disagree. I think his stock was really, really high already, really high before this. Now I think it's taken a hit.
That's why we're here. We get to agree to disagree.
Exactly.
And he didn't look. He wasn't the receiving running back. That was obviously
Hines.
That's Hines.
No,
that wasn't Taylor. So if they're going to be behind, he's only playing 2 downs.
They also have said that he's looked very good in camp catching.
Yeah, but they love Nyheim Hines, and Nyheim Hines is an incredible pass catching running back that could end up getting a lot of those balls.
Let me give you a few more notes here.
Okay, go ahead.
Julio Jones and Darren Waller both missed 2 days straight of practice. Jones came down awkward. He's missed a couple days. Could it be something that we're looking at long term? They haven't really said yet, so we don't know. But of course, it's early, right? There's another month, almost 5 weeks before the season starts. So we're not going to get too concerned now, but it is, these are always things that you want to keep an eye on. So that's Julio Jones and Darren Waller both. You also have, and I was going to bring up Waddle. Waddle he's been like the talk of camp at this point. Apparently he's looked amazing. His route running, he's been faking people out. He's been all over the field, and that's something to watch. You do have, I know we're going back to this, but you do have Fuller there. But if Fuller isn't practicing, and he's going to get on the field, you might have one of these guys. You might have Waddle step in and not come out. Right? We saw it last year with Justin Jefferson. You get a guy like that, you don't take him off the field. He's too valuable. Anyway, let
me tell you what I'm concerned about, and I'll let you go back to your notes. And this is, I had this discussion today. Right now, it's just training camp. We know that. We know this really doesn't mean much in the long run, but we are so desperate for football that we are grabbing any bit of news we can, and
exactly.
And that's fine, and that's all part of the fun, and that's what we do. But we also. It hurts when I hear out of, and I know that my son has gone to every training camp session so far, and he's been texting me and telling me how great Tua's doing, and Tua has been doing great. He threw 1 interception today, he overthrew Albert Wilson, and Javon Holland intercepted the ball. But the point is, that really pisses me off that our defense sucks so bad. And so when you hear stuff from camp, right, about this player doing so well or this player not doing well, that's just telling you that defense is doing well or not doing well. And we know that defenses usually come about quicker in the new season than offenses do. And they're not even opening a book right now for their offense. They're just getting the mechanics in.
Mind
So
you, though, the
only reason I'm
centerpiece of
bringing
that
that up-
secondary is not there, and that's a big deal.
Well, we
X
know
has
that
not
X
played.
in
That's a
Miami, we
big
know that
deal.
X isn't there, and they're trying to figure out different schemes. We understand that.
And the run defense has looked good.
Well, I mean, they only put on pads today. I mean, we don't. I mean, yesterday. So we
No,
don't
yesterday.
know
Yeah.
yesterday. So we don't really know what's going
Right.
to happen. But all I'm trying to say is, this is training camp. Anything
Right.
we're talking about this player, that player, we hope you do your research out there, because we're just reporting what we see, right? We can't translate that into something relevant for fantasy yet. I think we have to wait for preseason, wait for injuries, and right before the season starts at the end of August, the end of this month, we'll be in a much better position.
Of
where
course.
we're not necessarily just guessing.
But you also have a lot of people doing their drafts now or next week or the second
That's
weekend.
true.
So there's
Yep.
always people looking for information and wanting to know everybody's thoughts on what to do with their picks. Let me
Yeah.
give you a potential fantasy relevant injury. Okay, Tariq Cohen, his rehab has not been going very well.
Right.
And they say that he could miss even more time than they thought. So David Montgomery's value, potentially fantasy-wise, creeps up a little bit. Now, it's not going to go a whole lot higher because, he was probably in that 12 to 15 running back as it was. But when you're looking at it and you don't have Tariq Cohen behind you to take those snaps for a bit, and what he did at the end of the year last year could put his value, you could kind of creep him into your thoughts a little bit more than you did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Let's have some good news, though. Let's talk about some good news from an injury standpoint. Amari Cooper. I mean, let's stop being so damn cynical. Amari Cooper is feeling back to himself, almost 100%. Calvin Ridley, same thing. He's feeling nearly back to himself. Antonio Gibson had a turf toe injury, kept him out the last couple of weeks. He's looking very good in practice, almost back to 100%. Same thing with Saquon Barkley. They love what they're seeing from him, making very good strides. It's not 100% that he's going to start week 1, but they really, really like what they're saying out of him. There's some interesting news about DeAndre Swift. There was a beat writer on Twitter posting this guy might be the bell cow. I know they got Jamal Williams there, but they're very, very big on DeAndre. Not saying he is going to be a 3-down back, but they really, really like what they're saying.
Can I throw in? Yeah. We have some questions coming in, and we're going to get to those in just a couple minutes, guys. But I'm going to throw one in here that I was watching a little bit, and then I was doing some research. But Brian Edwards, okay, the second-year receiver in Las Vegas, is doing very well in camp. They have people, and obviously we are not, but they have people comparing him to Terrell Owens, looking like Terrell Owens, and catching like Randy Moss right now. So
what's wrong, Kamish?
I said it is not me. I said it's not me, but
again, training camp.
There are people that are more desperate than us to label their players the next coming of who knows what.
I said
every wide receiver that's ever come out is the next Randy Moss, and every quarterback is the next Dan Marino. And I mean,
I understand that they're talking about it. It's camp, just like we said.
He won't even make the team.
But
sorry, go ahead.
But apparently, they have not been super happy with Ruggs there. He's had some issues there. So you take someone else and kind of plug him in. Yeah, it's camp. Tomorrow is going to be a different story. Look, you brought it up earlier. Trey Lance, right? On Monday was reported he wasn't going to take any first-team snaps. And what happened Tuesday? He took first-team snaps. So it's camp. It changes daily.
Yeah. And now they're talking about Garoppolo still being the guy.
Of course.
Also, take note, Marquise Brown pulled a hamstring, and they said it's a little more serious than they originally thought. So that's something to monitor. He could miss some time. So big target there for Lamar Jackson.
All right, so let's get to some of the questions that we have right now. I know, let me see, the Bruno Meister has asked, where do you see running back J-Rob going in your mock drafts? Let me show this question here. Guys, I don't know about you. I've dropped him considerably. to probably around, what do I have him on my list? Around running back late 20s, right?
That's
I'm probably not
amazing.
drafting him until the 6th round or 7th round if he's available. And I will tell you, one of the main reasons for this is his success, which was a big surprise last year, but his success was really based on receiving 96% of the carries for his team.
Yeah.
We have new quarterback, new coaching staff. They drafted Travis Etienne out of Clemson. He's not going to get 96%.
No.
His fantasy value was based on how many carries he was getting, and he's not going to get that now.
If you had a draft at the end of last year, going into this year, where would James Robinson have gone compared to where he would go now? At the end of last year, he would have been a top 10 running back.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right? Easy.
Because nobody else was going to get that share. But we also have to remember, new coaching staff, they're not tied to Robinson. It's, the Urban Meyer scheme is completely different. It's usually more of a pass-first offense. So you're going to see things different in Jacksonville, in Duval. So I don't know.
Obviously, Alan, Bruno, the outlook for Robinson is not great. Of course, it is training camp. We don't know what's going. We don't exactly know what's going to go on there over the next couple weeks. He does have a little bit more experience because he played all last year, but the outlook does not look promising to do what he did last year.
Yeah, I've got him as a 30th running back off the board. Someone possibly in a flex spot. Etienne gets hurt, then J-Rob becomes the guy again. But he lost a lot of value, unfortunately, with that draft pick. And it was a very curious draft pick for them. I think a lot of people questioned it because they hit such a home run with Robinson last year, proving himself both healthy, able to carry the load, catch the ball out of the backfield, get the short yardage, break tackles.
It's going to be a different offense, and I think they figured the combination that they're going to be able to get that they had in Clemson with Etienne and Lawrence, they're going to be able to do it again. So, but we'll see. Now, Dave wants to know what number 2 or 3 running backs would you think have the upside to turn into a number 1 running back. He thinks Darrell Williams and Mike Davis. I don't necessarily disagree with you. Mike Davis, I don't know if he'll turn into a number 1. I think Mike Davis will probably outperform his ADP, but I don't necessarily see him becoming RB1. I think somebody maybe like DeAndre Swift.
That's funny. I know I'm starting to come around a little bit, and I agree on Darrell Williams, but J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, I'm sorry. You know what? I don't think Darrell Williams will be. I thought you were talking about Darrell Henderson. That's my bad. I think it's going to be Henderson, Montgomery.
Yes, that's mine was Darrell.
No, I don't think Darrell Williams, unless something happens to CEH, right? Or Mike Davis are necessarily going to become number 1s.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Davis has the opportunity to, right, in Atlanta, but it just doesn't. Oh, he did say he meant Henderson.
Okay, yeah, he did mean Henderson.
Yeah, Henderson.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Henderson right now is still going later in drafts, and
I am telling you, he's going to be the steal of the draft because I'm telling you that guy is going to perform with Stafford there now. That guy is going to have a monster year as long as he stays healthy.
I think
it all comes down to health with him.
Can he stay healthy?
I think by the time we draft, he's not going to be this like sleeper. He's going to be talked about more over the next couple weeks.
And see who does in preseason.
Right. Right now, he's like the 25th running back or something in that range, where I think he'll end up being closer to the 15.
The problem with Mike Davis is that defense is so bad.
Agreed.
And they're such a pass-happy offense, and they don't have a good their offensive line is not a good blocking line. As a matter of fact, and they're a little concerned about what the beating Mike Davis is going to take. They just brought in Deontay Foreman. They're looking at signing him because they want that big burly kind of back to come in there so they can preserve Mike Davis. I love Mike Davis. He's a talent. I loved him in that Carolina offense, but I mean, I don't think he's going to get the lofty expectations that some people have on him.
Another issue there, as far as fantasy relevant with Mike Davis, Matt Ryan has never been a check down quarterback, right? And that, right? And Mike Davis proved that he could do that last year. He did that when he filled in, for several games last year, a bunch of games. And so he does have that ability, but Matt Ryan just does not check down.
I got another name. And plus, how many balls are they going to go around, right? You're not going to be running Mike Davis. You're going to have to get a guy that does one of two things or both. Carry the ball at least 15 to 20 times a game.
Right.
Or somebody who's going to catch the ball. So when you are in your 2-minute offense, you're getting 4 or 5 receptions every time you go down the field, and you're getting half PPR or full PPR. I don't think Davis has either one of those in Atlanta, because Atlanta – especially with Pitts and Ridley, I think it's going to be a different offense. But I'm going to throw another name out there, and call me a homer.
Myles Gaskin.
Talk about somebody under the radar and probably short enough to fit under the radar. This guy last year only trailed Alvin Kamara in yards per route as a running back. So we know Tua does check down, and he will check down, and Gaskin will be that guy. And the only caveat is, will Malcolm Brown come on strong during preseason, not necessarily to supplant him, but to show enough to where you might start seeing a shared backfield.
Well,
looking at Gaskin, by the way, in training camp, he's been unreal. He's been great.
And that's why he got the starting job last year, because he showed it in training camp. His big question is health. But now what I'm concerned, Malcolm Brown being a very able-bodied, short yardage guy, how much vulturing is going to go on inside the 3, 4, 5 yard line with Malcolm Brown coming in, stealing those touches. And then they know Gaskin, they love him, but he had those health issues. You've got a very comparable type running back in Ahmed. So the question is Salvin going to come in, and are they going to get split duties there to keep Gaskin fresh? So I love him, but I get a little concerned about his usage with what's going on there in that 3-headed monster.
All right, so I have a note here, and we also have another question from Dave, and I have a question that I didn't type in, but it's from Jason that we got emailed to us.
Let's just follow this up real quick, because he said he has Henderson in his keeper league for a 12th rounder, or Mike Davis for a 16th rounder. Which would you choose? To me, it's a no-brainer.
Henderson
send that 12th to get that 12th rounder for Henderson.
Absolutely,
Henderson as well, definitely all day long.
Davis is going to have a couple big games, but I don't think it's going to be a consistent over the season, right? There's going to be a game where he gets 3 touchdowns and 140 yards, but then he's also going to have games where he's going to have like 45 yards and 2 catches for 10 yards. I think is like you're up and down with him. Where
we talked about this on the show, but I'll be really impressed. Can either of you name the second running back on the Rams, the backup to Henderson?
Koo. The Rams. I thought you were going to say Falcons.
No, the second running back behind Henderson. I can't even name it. I forgot. We covered it on a show, but I can't remember his name.
We talked about it, yeah.
That's how. My point is, that's how obscure that running. There's no running back by committee there. It's all his. It's just like you said, Kamish. Can he stay healthy? But that's his backfield all to himself.
Yeah, until he proves otherwise, then yeah, absolutely. So,
to answer your question, I just looked it up. It's Xavier Jones and Jake Funk.
Funk.
We love
it.
I
couldn't come up with the same. We love Funk.
Want the funk.
So we talked about this. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, where it's going to be a 17-game season, and how we're coaches going to manufacture that as far as running back time and extra carries or not extra carries. And we've already had a coach come out and say we're going to think about later in the season when we have our running back in the game. They've already said it, and it was about Zeke. That they are going to potentially, right? We don't know this. Limit his, the battering he's taking to think about the playoffs, which is already presumptuous that they're going to go to the playoffs. But we're thinking fantasy playoffs, right? So we want them healthier later in the season for the regular season. we don't care about the regular playoffs.
So that means go draft Tony Pollard for your.
I'm still grabbing Zeke in my top 6. I don't that's not going to dissuade me at all.
So it's just something to think about, right? We've already had a coach come out and say it. So how is that going to affect other players? The question I had from Jason in Fort Lauderdale was, how do you have 3 potential top receivers, right? And the QB is not in the top 10/15 quarterbacks. And this is pertaining to the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Where you have Juju, you have potentially Claypool and Deontay Johnson, and you don't have Roethlisberger in your top quarterbacks. And this has always been a struggle, and we've talked about this in the past. What do you guys think?
Well, number one, he can't stay healthy for a season. That's a big deal, and that's his biggest deal. When Roethlisberger has had the health and he's had the continuity of a 16, now 17 game season, let me tell you something. He is a top 10 quarterback. I mean, he's had 5,000 yard, 35 touchdown seasons before. He just can't stay healthy. Part of the problem is the offensive line. So it's a big part of it. He doesn't stay on the field.
Well, keep in mind that 3 1,000-yard receivers doesn't even mean anything anymore. I mean, 3,000 yards for a quarterback is nothing.
Right.
So you have the health issue. The guy's 39 years old. Yes, he supposedly slimmed down. I don't know if that's going to prevent him from getting injured. But, yeah, I mean, he's got receivers that week in, week out. And to be honest with you, I think I'm going to stay away from Deontay, from Claypool, from Juju, because having had Deontay last year, it's difficult from week to week who the star is going to be there.
Right.
But to answer your question, you got to look at a quarterback aside from his receivers. You got to look at the scheme, and you got to look, if Roethlisberger was throwing to 3 1,500-yard receivers, we would have a different conversation right now.
Right. And again, the reason why that was the case was so that is that's 3,000 yards. There was no rushing going on, so they had to throw. They couldn't run the ball. They had a bronze.
That's what you want in fantasy.
Exactly, but it wasn't enough though. So yeah, that's a lot again, but that's only 3,000 yards. There was not a tight end there that was getting a lot of yards. Ebron was touchdown dependent. He didn't have a lot of yards. So you're right. It's not that big a deal to have 3,000.
So here's the game log. Here's the game log.
Yeah.
From last year, starting in week 11. And this is when you need your quarterback to perform, right? 17 points, 13 points, 19, 15, 7, and 25.
Right.
If your quarterback going into the playoffs doesn't get you at least 20 points a game, there's a problem.
You got problems. Right.
And there were times where those receivers were doing very well during those weeks.
Right.
And they all weren't getting it, right? So week 14, he only threw for 187 yards. Week 15, only 170 yards. So you weren't getting Claypool. You weren't getting Juju and Deontay all with 100 yards.
Right.
They all have 100 yards. They all have 1,000-yard potential. It doesn't mean that's going to happen.
Yeah, his numbers don't jump out at you thinking about those wide receivers. You would think he would be throwing for 6,000 yards with those 3 wide receivers, but it just doesn't equate all the time to that. I heard an interesting stat today. They were talking about Jared Goff in the Rams offense, and 2 times he threw, because they were talking about Stafford and how his potential in that offense is, there's a high ceiling there. And, he's back from his injury. He had a thumb injury, but he's fine. He had a good practice. But twice in that offense, Jared Goff threw for over 4,600 yards.
Right.
Okay. How many times has Aaron Rodgers thrown for over 4,600 yards?
I don't know that he ever has.
I don't know.
One time.
Right.
One time. Yeah, I mean, even think about it. That's amazing that Jared Goff has more, games of over 4,600 yards than Aaron Rodgers. So it's and what we're talking about is that offense and the Matthew Stafford's potential there.
You know what's amazing? It feels like Stafford's been around forever. Like this is a guy that's in his late 30s. He's only 33 years old. I mean, this guy's got a good 6-7 years of football if he stays healthy.
Who's Stafford?
Yeah.
Yeah, but football wise, he's like 50. He's just been beat up so much.
Yeah, he would be in the conversation as one of the greats, if to me, in my opinion, just like with Barry Sanders, if he had gone to somebody other than Detroit.
Right. Detroit, yeah.
Right.
But
I think what he's going to do in LA is going to be fantastic. I expect big years from Woods, Kupp, possibly even your boy Higbee. But some big years there, some big seasons for those guys.
All right. So if anybody has any questions and you want to know what's going on in camp, or they have any questions about a draft that they might have coming up, give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, or comment like Dave did, like Kenneth did, like Alan did, in the comments section at Facebook Live or on YouTube Live. But what we're going to do, guys, right now, we're going to jump into a mock draft. And we are going to allow you all to pick what number. And if we don't, just go ahead and comment in Facebook Live what position you would want us to draft in, and we will go ahead and do that. And if we don't hear from somebody in the next few seconds, then we'll decide, or you two can pick a number. Are you?
We'll set this up as a PPR.
We can do PPR. We can do half PPR.
Half PPR.
We can do half PPR. That's fine.
So Dave sent it looks like maybe an article about how Cowher has said Roethlisberger probably is chomping at the bit to prove doubters. He's been doing this for years, right? But I don't think that there's any doubters out there about Roethlisberger. It's not like they had a bad season last year, right? They 11-5. But
we're talking fantasy, right?
Fantasy.
We're talking Roethlisberger as a fantasy quarterback. To me, he's a borderline Hall of Famer, and I haven't done enough research on it, but I have no problem saying that. I have no problem saying that he's definitely in the consideration to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. The question is, for fantasy purposes, is that somebody we want to take at this point in his career?
Right.
But who knows?
He has the potential. Yeah, he has the potential, absolutely, to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He's done it before, and a few times for that matter. It's just which Big Ben are you going to get? How are they going to game plan around it? And how's that offensive line going to hold up? A lot of question marks.
Right.
It's just no guarantee.
Okay, so Dave said pick from the 12 spot.
I think
we want to cap that at 10.
Yeah, I think we're going to do a 10 team. The only issue I'm having is the ability to share my screen.
Okay.
So
let me see.
This may be a no-go.
Let's see. Let me see if I can do mine.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me see if I can share my screen as well.
Share screen.
Talk amongst yourselves. No.
So while we're doing this, let me ask about the benefits of a 12-team versus 10-person team. Do you find that your rosters are obviously more hardy in a 10-person league, right, as opposed to a 12? Is it just a matter of wanting more friends to play, or?
I've always been a big component of a 10-person league. I know there's positives and negatives. With the 12-person league, you just have deeper teams. I always find that even in a 10-person league that you are always still great, can't find players sometimes to pick up. I like 10-person leagues. Have I played in 12-person leagues? Yes, I still enjoy it. I just like to be able to have some players to pick up and some movement. Now, the other thing I like about a 12-person league, and I've even played in a 14-person league, is the trading. I love trading. So trading becomes more into play when you're in bigger leagues, I believe,
right?
Because there's less availability for players out there. So that part I like about it. So this, I do like both, but I do tend to like 10-person leagues. Now I do like 10-person leagues with smaller. I don't like that many bench spots. I know some people like a lot of bench spots. I am not a big component of it. I like that you have to make trades, and there's some free agents out there, but everybody's got their likes and dislikes of different types of leagues.
Okay,
and those are mine.
Thank you. I was able to get the screen shared, so we're good to go on this. Let me hold on one second. Let me get rid of this. They got these questions here. Hold on. Hide. There we go.
All right.
I was going to do this as well, but I will let you roll with it because you are good to go.
No, I just got to get rid of this banner. Okay. So here we are. We're going to go half PPR. Do you want to do 5 so we're just in the middle? Do you think that's our best opportunity to do the 5th?
What did Dave said he wanted us to do it at 10?
He said 12. Why don't we do like 7?
7.
Okay.
Because that's something that, is a little more relatable.
to you?
Well, it's just like, it's kind of in the middle. It's very special to be in the 10th and get two spots. It's a little different. If you're 7, you could equate that to being 5, 6, or 8. 10 is, what I'm saying? It's
okay, so we're going to do 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, a flex, not a super flex, just a regular flex, and a quarterback. But we're only doing 3 rounds. So quarterback may or may not come into play except for maybe 1 or 2. And it is a half PPR and standard league. And we're going to start here. We need music. And I'm going to show the draft board. That's always more fun. So can you guys see this? Are you able to see this here?
Yeah. McCaffrey, Kamara, Henry, Cook, Elliott.
Okay. So, let me get rid of our branding. Okay. McCaffrey first. Now, there's no way Alvin Kamara is going number 2. Am I wrong about this? I know these are just
a little early.
When you say a little early, normally he's going 4. It's 2 spots, but you're just talking about the players that you potentially take ahead of him. I think Dalvin Cook is more slotted for that number 2 spot than Kamara, but
I think it's obvious that it's Dalvin Cook at number 2. Right. In fact, I've even seen some drafts where they had Dalvin 1 and McCaffrey 2. So I think 2 is a no-brainer for Cook, and 3 is a no-brainer for Henry.
Right.
I agree. I think Kamara might go 4, might go 5. Some people are going to be a little scared of Kamara, right, because of what's happening in New Orleans right now. Does it matter if it's Hill? Does it matter if it's Winston to you guys with regard to Kamara?
Not really. I think Hill is going. I think Winston will check down more, although he's a gunslinger as well, because Taysom is going to take off and use his legs. I think, although when Taysom was in there, let me tell you something. Kamara did still get catches, not as much, obviously, with Breeze. I'd rather see Winston in there than Hill for Kamara's value.
So here's some stats on that. Okay, I'll give you some inside information, and this is for PPR purposes, but let me explain, because that's where Kamara really shines. But there were, over the past 2 years, there were 9 games in which Breeze did not play. Okay, over the past 2 years. So we look at that little grouping of 9 games, and how did Kamara finish? Well, in 3 of them, he finished as RB3, RB6, and RB9. But in the other 6, he was RB16, 17, 23, 26, 36, and 37. And yes, we know it was when Teddy Bridgewater was in. It wasn't a high-scoring offense. And when Taysom Hill came in, he just had 16 total pass game opportunities in those 4 games together.
Right.
And that's my problem with Taysom Hill.
And that's the problem with Taysom Hill. So
exactly.
So if Winston comes in, if Winston starts, and I don't know if y'all seen the tweet today of Winston trying to go through the blockers, and it was very awkward, but do a Twitter search for Winston. Winston's not Bridgewater, right? Winston's going to have a more high-powered offense.
Yes.
And he's not Taysom Hill, so he's going to check down more. He's not going to take the ball and run. So if we find out that Winston is going to be the starting quarterback for the majority of the time, I think Kamara's stock goes way up.
Way up.
If it's Taysom, I'm a little concerned. In either case, I don't have him at number 2.
I'll tell you something very interesting. Several of those weeks, at least 3 of them, that Taysom was at quarterback, Latavius Murray had more fantasy points than Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
I know because I had them both. It was very frustrating, very frustrating with Hill under center. So I agree that that's going to be troublesome.
Being at this point in the number 4 slot, I'm hoping that Winston is the starter there, so I feel more comfortable about taking Kamara. You talk about a guy who his value, if he becomes the starting quarterback in New Orleans, could be huge. I mean, he led the league in passing the year before, Winston. Also in interceptions.
Right.
But you talk about the value of sitting behind a Drew Brees for a year and learning from Drew Brees. I mean, this guy, if he could take and kind of harness what he watched for a year, I think he, in with Sean Payton, could be phenomenal.
Which is what he said he did. He said he really learned a lot under Brees. So I think we beat that to death. I'm curious, guys. Sitting here at number 6 spot, I mean, to me, it's a very obvious.
I don't want to go to 6 yet. I want to talk about Zeke. Because Brad, what if Taysom Hill is the starter? Who are you grabbing at 4? Are you going to grab Kamara there? Or are you going to grab Ezekiel Elliott? Or none of the above?
It may be none of the above. I know people are, Elliott has moved right back up. I'm just not sold on him this year. But I don't know what to do about Barkley. They're saying he may not even play the first week or first couple weeks at this point. But that's somebody you want on your team, right? For the whole year. I don't know what I'd do there. Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I might take Jonathan Taylor there.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. So go ahead, Keith. You were talking about 6 and somebody grabbing Devontae Adams in this mock. Are you suggesting that it's too high for a wide receiver and for that wide receiver?
I think it's a little high. I understand with what's going on with Saquon, although what I read about him today is they're really liking his progress. I would grab Saquon there. I love Devontae. I have him as obviously the number 1 receiver. I have him ahead of Hill and Diggs, but in the 6th spot, if Barkley's there, I'm taking him.
Let's not forget that a year ago we were sitting here having this discussion. We were saying, are we taking Barkley first or are we taking CMC first? I mean, It was almost like, that was the issue. Who was going to go first?
Right.
And yes, he did get hurt, but as one of the doctors had said, that there's 3 criteria they look at for this type of injury to see if he's going to do well for the next year. One is high draft capital, right? He was drafted very high. His age, under 24, and the fact that it's relatively a non-complex injury, something that can be fixed. So with all of those things together, he feels confident that we're going to see a lot of Saquon and that he's going to be the Saquon of old. He's going to get the lion's share of carries in New York, right? So
he also got injured so early in the season last year that he's had an enormous time, a big length of time to recover. So he hasn't had to push the recovery.
Okay, so they picked Devontae Adams. Are we questioning, guys? Are we questioning that Adams, whether if he's the first receiver to be taken, or should it be Tyreek Hill, or is this a given that
Devontae for me it's Adams?
I think Adams or Diggs, honestly.
Yeah,
over Hill.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, and Adams to me is the unquestionable number 1, and I think that they're both. Adams is in a contract year. Is that right? He has 2 years left. And, just with what's been going on in their offseason, I think that they got a lot to prove. So I love Adams. I just would pick Barkley first.
So is this a no-brainer then for us at 7? We're now sitting here. We have the option of Barkley. We could also grab safer picks. We don't have to worry about injuries to people like Nick Chubb, Taylor, Jones. how do you feel about taking Barkley here? Now, my personal feeling is I'm grabbing him real fast at this point at 7. Barkley's there.
Yeah, I agree.
I think eventually, most people are going to grab Barkley here. He falls. I think a lot of drafts you'll see him go 6, 7, right in that spot. It's going to be pretty common there. Again, if you want to be a little safer, maybe you take Chubb, or maybe even Taylor at that 7 spot.
But you guys forget Chubb missed 7 games last year too. So this is a guy that has injuries as well, and he's sharing a backfield. Barkley's sharing the backfield with Alfred Morris. So I mean, again, to me, it's a no-brainer. I love Chubb. Taylor's a beast, and that would be without Carson Wentz there, I might have gone Taylor.
Well, 41% of experts agree it's Saquon Barkley. So that's who we're taking here. After that, JT, Nick Chubb, Travis Kelce sneaks into the first round.
Yep, Tyreek
and
Hill,
then
Gibson.
This person Gronkum style then goes with Tyreek Hill. So he's going the no RB route.
Wow, it's going no RB. Look at that.
It'll be interesting to see who's not there when he comes around to try to get a running back later. But Crowdered House now has Chubb and Gibson, so he's got 2 really good running backs to start. Orange Herbert has JT and Aaron Jones, also 2 fantastic running backs. If you're at the end of the draft, you have this possibility of grabbing these 2 running backs. Your only questioning now is who's going to be your wide receiver number 1.
Right. So there are so many you've got arguably one of the best running backs in the league. There's going to be in the 3rd and 4th round, arguably some very good running backs that could still be had that are very high end RB2 still available. So to me, in this spot, you've got 1 wide receiver left that is left in that first tier.
That's easy.
This is a no-brainer with Stephon Diggs. I don't know how we would not draft Diggs here. You're getting the last of the elite. To me, that is a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll pull the trigger on Diggs. And then Ridley comes off the board.
Yeah.
Then Austin Eckler. We know that offense is going to be pretty high-powered, right, with their new offensive coordinator. Who came from New Orleans with Kamara. So it should be interesting to see what he does with Eckler. Najee Harris. Any question about, in fact, if Dave is still listening, I would love to find out how he feels about that Pittsburgh offensive line and how it relates to Najee Harris's success. Right. How do you guys feel about picking a fantasy running back in the 2nd round that has no line in front of him?
I don't like it. I think he's gonna have issues. I really, really do. I think it's arguably, was it James Conner? Was it the line? He wasn't healthy either, but no one's been able to run behind that line. And that's, again, a team that likes to pass first. So I think that was a little high for Harris. There's no denying his.
I don't think so.
We know Harris can catch the ball, right? I mean, he made a living out of that in Alabama. So we know that he's going to be fine out of the backfield catching the ball. But does that mean he's going to be a 3-down back? We don't know yet. We're going to see tomorrow night, right?
Well, maybe. I don't have any, especially when you get Dalvin Cook in the first round. You're solid there. I don't have any problem with Harris going there. I mean, are there other running backs? Yeah, and they're going to pick up a few, in the 6th round, 7th round, maybe at this point, because they're, obviously they haven't taken a wide receiver. But I have no problem taking Harris there.
I'll tell you who I actually like over Harris and who I would take right now at this spot, and it's going to round out a very nice running back tandem and go with Stephon Diggs, and that's David Montgomery. You got Tariq Cohen, who's been hurt. Montgomery absolutely laid it on towards the end of the year. You've got Andy Checkdown Dalton that's probably going to be starting at the helm with the really decent defense. I think Montgomery is going to outdo Najee Harris, and that's a great pickup here in the 3rd round to round out Barkley and Diggs.
I think right here I'm looking at J.K. Dobbins. So I was kind of looking at the draft, like overall, right? And I think the guy at the end, right? He's got Kelsey and Hill. If I'm sitting there, I'm looking at Montgomery and Henderson, or Dobbins and Montgomery, or
what position?
The 10 spot, right? I'm just looking at the overall draft, not just our team. But this guy is going to want to get a couple of running backs here, most likely, or at least one running back, because he doesn't have a receiver as well.
Which name? I don't know which one.
Brockman style.
But we're not
right.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
I was lost. I thought we were talking about the Aaron so far away, the Najee Harris spot.
Right. Well, we finished that conversation and moved on to.
Well, no, I'm a little shocked that you guys are devaluing Joe Mixon. Why would you pick a rookie without a line in front of somebody who finished, even after being hurt, as the 10th rated running back in PPR last year?
I'll tell you why.
A guy who they gave a $48 million extension to, a guy whose offensive coordinators went on record saying that he doesn't want Mixon to leave the field. A guy who lost his only threat behind him in Giovanni Bernard, and a guy who now has a quarterback. And we talked today about Burrow not being good in 2 days of training camp, but he's going to have a quarterback. So why are you picking Najee over Mixon?
I will tell you why. Because I think the only offensive lines, run blocking offensive lines that are worse than Atlanta and Pittsburgh is probably Cincinnati.
I disagree.
Mixon had a couple of blow-up games last year. But if you want to look this up week by week, Joe Mixon had a lot of problems last year. When he wasn't injured, he had so many consistent duds. It's not his talent. That is a terrible run-blocking offensive line. So I just don't like the scheme and what he's running behind. That's my problem with Najee as well. I'll tell you what, I'd rather have Montgomery, or right here, or even before then, where these guys picked Mixon and Harris, I'd rather have David Montgomery or Darrell Henderson than either of those two.
They have Jonah Williams. They signed Riley Reif. They got Jackson Carman in the second round. I think the Cincinnati Bengals line is actually going to surprise a lot of people. I don't necessarily, Trey Hopkins still comes back as center. I think they have a much better offensive line. I still think they're like in the lower third of the NFL in offensive lines, especially in pass protection. But in run blocking, I don't think you can compare them to how bad the Giants or the Steelers are.
I'll tell you why people
even Miami.
I'll tell you why people are devaluing Joe Mixon. Last year he played 6 games. It's like out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yes.
But even out of those 6 games, he only had 1 game over 100 yards.
That's
okay. And he had a couple targets a game. He had 6 targets, 2 targets, 4 targets. Mm-hmm. He had the least amount of carries in a game was 16. That was for 46 yards, right? Long and nine. People, it's last year. It's what have you done for me lately? He only played 6 games. You didn't see him for the rest of the year, and that was it, right? He had 1 game of 151 yards, 36 fantasy points. Every other game was 12, 9, 6, 8, and 5. So people that had him, like 2020 and I in the one league that we split, we just have this bad taste about him as well. And I think anybody.
I'll tell you what. I read a really interesting article, actually, in the Sentinel, regarding offensive lines. And you know what? Much more important than the talent on the offensive line, because I'll be a homer for a second. How many early round draft picks over the last 2 decades have the Dolphins expensed on the offensive line, and they still can't get it together? More important than the offensive line is the offensive line coach in the scheme. They were talking about Jimmy Johnson and the offensive line he put together with Nate Newton and all those guys. A couple of those guys were undrafted. They weren't very talented, but I forget the name of the offensive line coach who was an absolute genius and got the most out of him. I don't know if Cincinnati changed their offensive line coach, and that's certainly been the big issue on the Dolphins because all of these early round picks have not turned into anything. Yeah, Austin, I'm not going to go into the Dolphins, but all these early round picks. So yes, Cincinnati has they brought in some people as well, but does that matter? Are they changing their scheme? Are they getting them to play together? Is the offensive line coach getting the most out of that offensive line? Because it's one of the few coaching positions in football that's more important than the actual talent of the players.
All right. Well,
and that's one of the issues Cincinnati has, and that's one of the issues the Dolphins have had for the last 2 decades.
I hope everybody continues to devalue Joe Mixon, so when he comes back around in the second round, he'll be available for me.
All yours.
When we after Najee Harris, you
luck.
have DK Metcalf. Were you picking DK Metcalf before DeAndre Hopkins, guys?
Not
and before
even
close.
Jefferson?
No.
Okay, so
No.
you would have, if you're going to pick a wide receiver here, would it be
DeAndre.
JK or Hop?
DeAndre.
Okay, so DeAndre
Yeah.
Hopkins, then Joe Mixon. Then I guess at that point you'd probably go Justin Jefferson. They went DeAndre because DK was there, and then they grabbed Darren Waller, which I found interesting. Instead of grabbing a second running back,
Right.
at this point, what's the thought there? Do you, if you're Murray up offense, these are some good names. If you're Murray up offense, are you grabbing a running back here since you spent your second round pick on a wide receiver, or does Darren Waller really give you that much difference? You know, let's put it this way: if you pick DeAndre Swift there, and then coming back around, you decided to go with your tight end. And who might be available at tight end at that spot?
Andrews,
Maybe Hawkinson, Andrews.
Hawkinson.
You know,
Yeah.
is the difference between Waller and those guys greater than the difference between someone like DeAndre Swift and who he might have coming back around, which will be Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds, Javonte Williams? I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think it was.
But you know
smart.
what? But the three of us, that's never our style. We're never the early tight end guys. We're never the early quarterback guys because we know we're going to get value later on. And especially in a league, the way we set it up here, where it's 2 running backs and a flex, and you can arguably start 3 RB1s. When I say RB1, I mean the leaders on their team. I would definitely not have. And Darren Waller is a beast. I mean, what he did last year was absolutely insane.
He put up wide receiver numbers last year.
Yes, he was insane, but a little early for me. I
understand. Yeah, no, I get it, and you're right.
Yeah.
And I understand the next pick, which was home for the Galladays. At the second pick in the third round, they go with Justin Jefferson because if you can get somebody like Justin Jefferson at this spot in the third round, yeah, you forego your third running back as your flex and you grab because who knows who's going to be available coming back. Then they went with DeAndre Swift over CEH. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I know one of you mentioned J.K. Dobbins previously, all the way up where Najee was. Are you picking J.K. Dobbins before DeAndre and CEH, guys?
Yes, not only that, I'm picking Montgomery and Henderson over these guys because you get DeAndre, that's a 1A, 1B situation with Jamal Williams. You don't have that situation with Montgomery or Henderson, nor do you have that with – and hilarious, yeah, you got Darrell Williams there, but it's just I don't see that team being that, dependent on the run. I would go with Montgomery or Henderson over both of these guys here.
I personally think that all of those guys you just mentioned are kind of, you could put them in a bowl and pick one out and be like, okay, I'm taking this guy. Maybe Montgomery, we talked about him earlier a little bit, I think has a really good opportunity this year. Henderson, again, he's been falling, so he's, but with the injury to Akers, I think he moves right up into that bowl of these 5 or 6 guys that you can, take any of them, and a couple of them are going to do really well, and a couple of them are going to be like, why did I take that guy? Yeah.
Nope.
All right.
Interesting.
I get it.
All right.
But that's fine. So you're seeing that at this spot, there's plenty available, right? Now, let me tell you this with DeAndre Swift before we get off DeAndre Swift for a second. Anthony Lynn, who we know as the former coach of the Chargers, with that offense, with Keenan Allen, with Eckler, and the way that he ran that offense, I doubt he's going to go away from DeAndre Swift as much as maybe you think it's a 1A, 1B. I don't believe that is. And we'll see more as we get through preseason. I think it's going to be more of the DeAndre Swift show with maybe a few series with Williams, but we'll see. Then Patrick Mahomes. Too early, good point to grab him. What do you think?
I mean, middle of the third round, that's not a bad spot.
He was going in the mid to late second round last year. Yep. So to get him here in this spot, I mean, as far as a quarterback goes, this guy is putting up 30 plus points a week consistently. If he has
Josh Allen,
right? Agreed.
Are you picking Mahomes over Allen?
I still think Mahomes has played his way into the number one quarterback spot.
Yep. Mahomes has done it 3 years now. Yeah. Allen's had the 1 year. And I don't think it's a fluke. But Mahomes, what you're getting with Mahomes. Honestly, though, it's all early for me because I would wait and I'd happily get an Aaron Rodgers 2 rounds later and still build up my team. And I learned my lesson last year with quarterbacks going early with Jackson.
Thank you very much for wiping me out last year for the first half of the year. But I am waiting on quarterback. I don't think this is a bad pick, but I will tell you guys, I am waiting on quarterback this year. If I take a quarterback before the 5th round this year, I am drunk.
Okay, which is entirely possible, by the way.
Yes, indeed.
So now we got this guy Waddle, who now, like you said, Keith, he's grabbed his 3 RB1s at this spot, where CD Burner has grabbed 3 wide receiver 1s. So it's very interesting to see, how this is going to play out. But what that does is leave us with some very interesting choices in the 3rd round. At this point, if we wanted to get another running back before we start losing our running backs, we could grab Dobbins or Carson, Montgomery. I don't want to touch Sanders. I don't want to touch Jacobs or Henderson. So to me, it's Dobbins or Henderson, in my opinion.
I think it's Dobbins, Montgomery, or Henderson in this spot.
I agree. It's between Dobbins, Montgomery, and Henderson. And the reason why I like Henderson is that you've got a much better quarterback. You've got a very good defense, a good offensive line. It's just a balanced team that I think has the potential to get out ahead early and often. And again, what do we got? We want the Funk and who in the backfield with him. Yeah. I know this is high where his ADP is, but I never ever care about that. Anyone listening, you don't allow value-based drafting and ADPs to sway you away for something that you believe in for a good reason.
Absolutely. That's what's going to win you or lose you your fantasy year. You're going to go after guys that other people are, I'll be able to get him next round or whatever the case may be. I mean, look at Henderson's ADP right now. It's 62.
Exactly. So I'm all about harrying the Hendersons here. I just love the fact that it's not a new quarterback coming in, which is, going to be the case in Chicago, whoever it is, it's a new quarterback. You've got a great mind, McVay. Okay.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but here's the question. Are we reaching with a low ADP? Are we reaching for Henderson here knowing that he may be available when we come back around? And if he's not, we can get a Dobbins or Montgomery at that point.
I don't think you get Dobbins or Montgomery.
I'd rather
I don't think you're getting one of those 2 guys coming back around. You got 6 picks ahead of you. Maybe one of the 2.
Well, the 10th spot's probably going running back because
or running back wide receiver.
Right. You're probably okay with the 2 ahead of them because they both have their starting backfields. But again, in the event when you're in a flex league and you can start a running back, I'm always going to be the guy that wants to take another person that's going to have their hands on the ball 20 times a game.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take Henderson here, and let's see how this plays out. So the guy after, I know we're only doing a 3-round draft, and we're going to end this very soon, but I just wanted to see. So we took Henderson. The next guy grabbed Kittle. Then they got CeeDee Lamb, and then Dobbins and Jacobs. Most likely it won't be Jacobs.
No, it wouldn't.
It might be Carson. Montgomery. It could be Montgomery.
Yeah. Right.
Could talk someone into getting Sanders. But, yeah.
But with Montgomery available, oh, my God. I mean, again, the flex league, I'm still very OG, old school. I would love to grab Montgomery here. I think it's a steal, and then round out coming back around, get that second wide out, which you'll get on a. There's a bunch more out there. Personally, I would love to grab Montgomery here and grab your flex and have 3 stud running backs.
So by grabbing Montgomery here, your wide receiver list comes down to Cooper Kupp, Thielen, Johnson, Lockett.
It starts. Yeah, there's a wide receiver run there.
I love it though. Are you kidding me? Kupp with Matt Stafford there. Oh my God, I love Kupp. I still listen, Thielen, you got Justin Jefferson. Thielen still put up respectable numbers. And then, you got Tyler Lockett, who's, I think, one of the top touchdown leaders in the league over the last 3 years. So I'd be very happy with any one of those 3.
Okay, great. So
I love that draft.
I think that looked good. I think that would be a difficult team to have to face on a weekly basis.
So before we finish up, I know we're running late tonight. Can I just so I did a mock draft earlier in the number 4 spot.
Okay.
And I'll run through my team real quick. All right, very quickly. I got Kamara, and this is in order of round. Kamara, Edwards-Helaire, Jefferson, Darrell Henderson, Amari Cooper, Russell Wilson, Dallas Goedert, Chase Claypool, Fournette, Stafford. So I took a second quarterback there. Gus Edwards, Mike Williams, Phillip Lindsay, Ravens defense, and then Jonnu Smith late. So
who was your first wideout?
Justin Jefferson in the 3rd round. I got Amari Cooper in the 5th, and then Chase Claypool later, and then Mike Williams even later than that. This is the same system. This is our system. This is our system for our league. Okay, so and I got 82 out of 100 on my rating, so not bad.
Not bad, and I think what we need to do, and maybe we'll do this next week, is start talking about rounds 4 through 7, right? And taking a look at some of those middle picks, and maybe we'll just automatically go through those first 3 rounds without any choice, and then see what's left. And then we can start the difficult, the first 3 are easy, guys, right?
Right.
It's harder when we start talking about, do you want, Adam Thielen or do you want Kenny Galladay? That's when you start having those discussions that we really need to get into, as Keith would say, the meat and potatoes of the draft.
Right. And that's where you win and lose your league, right? We all know the first 3 rounds, but the old adage, rounds 4 through 8 can make you or break you very easily,
Absolutely. Okay, guys, we are going to finish up for tonight. Throughout the week, if you want to go ahead and go to our Facebook page and ask whatever questions you have, we will bring it up it's Tuesday night, I believe, that we're going to be back Tuesday night. We'll bring it back. We'll go through some mocks. We'll talk about news and notes from the NFL. If we have emails, we'll open up the mailbag, but we're here all fantasy, all day, all night, and the first game starts tomorrow night, guys. I'm psyched. Final words?
We will see you next week, and we are weeks away from 2021, as long as COVID doesn't keep going as bad as it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you changing your name, by the way, to 2021? Or
it wasn't for the year 2020. It was because of the division.
I know. All right, guys. Have a good one.
All right.